Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and professional growth and opportunity across America. This week, I met with Surf City USA's city attorney Michael Gates in our LA studio. Michael was elected as city attorney in the city of Huntington Beach, California in 2014 and has been a recognized force in his community and across California on key issues of local control and voter ID. In this episode, Michael delves into his career trajectory and aspirations, contemplating a potential shift towards the federal judiciary in the future. He candidly voices concerns about California's leadership direction, particularly in addressing pressing issues like homelessness and crime. Emphasizing the necessity for robust law enforcement and a reevaluation of priorities to better serve communities, Michael advocates for stronger adherence to existing laws. Reflecting on his tenure since 2014, he outlines the pivotal divisions within his office: civil litigation, community prosecution, and research and advisory, underscoring the significance of local control for fostering accountability and democracy. Despite these challenges, Michael remains optimistic about California's future. I hope you enjoy. Good morning, Michael. How are you doing?
Good. Good to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, you and I have spent a lot of times over the years together. I think starting back in probably 2012 was when the first time you and I got together.
Absolutely, and it's been an interesting 12 years for the both of us.
Yeah. I remember, and this was even before you were a city attorney, definitely involved in your community in Huntington Beach, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that when we get into your role as a city attorney. But I've really admired you, and it's been great to see your career and to follow all the great stuff you're doing for your city. So thank you again.
Yeah, and I've been admiring your last 12 years as well. So.
Oh, thank you. And what I was hoping to be able to do today a little bit is to talk about your career, getting to become a city attorney. You know, we've had a district attorney for Carson County, basically the Las Vegas area. Wanted to talk a little bit about being an attorney for a city and give a little bit of an overview of that role, some of the areas that you take on, kind of the uniqueness about, I think, this episode is being an elected city attorney, very different, not normal for a big portion of the California. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then probably get into some of the issues. You know, you're from Surf City, USA, one of the most popular places here in Southern California. You and I both kind of grew up in the area. And I'm sure it is kind of weird for you to be a part of now the city that's actually, and helping run that city. So I'm going to be fascinated to hear that. So bigger picture. So why don't we go ahead and start there, if you wouldn't mind, just a little bit, just stepping back and your journey into the city.
Yeah, so being the city attorney of Huntington Beach, it's I tell a lot of people it's probably the greatest job in the world. For me, for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, I grew up in the city of Huntington Beach. I was born in the Midwest in Ohio. When I was a small child, my folks literally moved to Huntington Beach from the Midwest. So Huntington Beach was our destination. My dad got a job at McDonnell Douglas there. And so I grew up there. And so now to be able to serve as the city attorney in Huntington Beach, in the town that I grew up in, is really so incredibly rewarding because every day I get to go to work and fight for the city I grew up in. Mm-hmm. And so it's just been a tremendous honor and a tremendous privilege. In addition to that, we've also just had a tremendous amount of success. So we've done, I think, really well for Huntington Beach. As you mentioned, it's an elected position. Interestingly, Huntington Beach is the only city in the entire county of 34 cities that elects the city attorney.
Right.
There are only 10 cities in the entire state of California out of 482 cities that elects the city attorney. But also interestingly, about 65 to 70% of voters in California vote for a city attorney. And that's because the 10 cities I just referenced are the larger cities with greater populations. So not unusual for Californians to elect their city attorney. But in terms of pure numbers by city, very rare to have a city with an elected city attorney.
Can I ask you a question, Michael? So before we get off the city in your biography, once you get there, you and I grew up. I was probably the 70s. Watching Huntington Beach was a lot of oil wells, a lot of vacant areas along the beach. My parents would take us to the beach. Really wasn't super organized. You'd be going out and surfing and bodyboarding, and then you see Huntington Beach today, and it's really built up, in a good way. But the Bolsa Chico wetlands, which is a little bit above Huntington Beach, definitely, preserving some of that space. It just seems like you have seen a tremendous amount. So that's probably got to be a good thing for you when you're trying to now govern the city. To kind of, do you get stuck in the way it was, or are you excited about the future and the direction that you see Huntington Beach going right now?
Well, I'm excited about the community and our city leadership. The community, it's a suburban beach town community. A lot of private property ownership, a lot of single family home ownership. And the community there's so much patriotism in Huntington Beach. There's so much pride in Huntington Beach for the residents. That's why there's so much passion. And that's why, frankly, Huntington Beach is sort of a standout city in the whole state of California because, we make a lot of headlines because there's so much enthusiasm, so much interest in protecting Huntington Beach the way it is. As you said, it is largely built. We're 100% developed in Huntington Beach, even though we do have a lot of open space that's protected, a lot of wetlands, nature preserves that are protected. But we are pretty fully developed. And I think our city leadership is doing a really good job right now of making sure that we preserve our way of life. So, there's kind of a movement in California, mainly coming from Sacramento, that cities sort of develop or redevelop in order to accommodate certain priorities for the state, including housing and high density housing, things like that. And our city leadership, I think, is doing a good job of trying to protect and preserve Huntington Beach's way of life. So to be a part of that as a city attorney is very exciting. And I know we're going to get into some detail later on in the interview. But it's just a great time to be city attorney. I think it's a great time to be a resident of Huntington Beach. And I think it's important for your audience to know, too, that Huntington Beach, we are not a small, obscure city. We've got 200,000 residents. It's the fourth largest city in the county of Orange out of 34 cities. It's the 24th largest city in the state of California out of 482. So we're in the top less than 5% in terms of size of city. So Huntington Beach is a really big city in the state of California. And so it's just a great place to live. It's a great place to be. And it's a great place to visit. We have, I think estimates are 15 million visitors a year because of the air show, because of the surf competitions, because of the 4th of July parade, things like that. So we are a destination for tourists, but we're also a great place to be a resident.
So, Michael, all of that stuff is true. I raised 3 boys. They all love the U.S. Open, the surfing contest down there. So, and I remember actually the time when it actually was there for the first time. So, a lot of great stuff in Huntington Beach. The question: when you got done with high school, and this may have been more my experience. I have friends today that still pursue the surfing lifestyle, and then you have people that went off to some of the best universities and do different stuff. What was your path when you got out of high school and when you kind of worked your way? I mean, now you're the city attorney, obviously. You picked legal or the law. Yeah.
So I love the whole Surf City, USA. I love being in the suburban beach town. I love the 8 miles in Huntington Beach, 8 miles of undeveloped coastline. So we're unique along the coast of California as a coastal city in that we have had a policy in place for years where we don't develop on the beach side of PCH. So if you drive down PCH all along Huntington Beach, you have 8 miles of the view of the ocean. So it's pretty unique. However, was never a water animal. I was always a land animal. So while I love Surf City, USA, and I love Huntington Beach, I love the coast, I love going to the beach. I was a football player in high school. I wrestled in high school. So I was a land animal. I've got a daughter that's surfing right now. So that's a lot of fun for her. But I like you said, I went to Marina High School in Huntington Beach. I went on to law school. And so I've just enjoyed staying in Huntington Beach and developing a career in law. And like you said, and I've talked about becoming the city attorney of Huntington Beach.
When you get into law, I had talked to the district attorney, Steve Wolfson, of like I said, in Las Vegas. It was kind of interesting as when he started out, he was really unsure kind of what the future. He went right into kind of public side, working in the district attorney down within that area of Las Vegas. But and then he ended up getting kind of prosecution, and defense experience, both sides of the aisle. And I think you had went the corporate route, and we're doing a lot of different. Can you talk about, just to give the foundation before you get ready to run for city attorney or something at that level, a little bit of your law experience?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. My foray into the practice of law was actually in medical malpractice defense. So I represented doctors and hospitals in defending them from lawsuits. And this was all in private practice. So I worked for a law firm doing medical malpractice. Then I went to more of a general practice law firm because I wanted to explore more different types of law and different strategies in representing clients. So I did more general practice. I was with a firm in Orange County, and we represented a whole array of different clients, one of which was the County of Orange. And I did Orange County Sheriff's work, defense work, defending the Orange County Sheriff's Department. And this was me in private practice, but the county would outsource their work to us in private practice. So got a lot of great experience going to trials, taking cases to trials, defending the Orange County Sheriff's Department, defending the county, but also defending large-scale trucking companies, that were involved in accidents and things like that. Represented schools, just defending them in a variety of different ways, whether it was employment law or trips and falls on some of the school campuses, things like that. So a lot of great experience. I became a partner at that law firm. And then, as you said, in 2012, when I got to know you and I started to dip my toe into politics and learning too, and really appreciating that Huntington Beach had an elected city attorney, I thought to myself, there's really kind of a unique opportunity here where I can take my love and passion for politics and maybe mix it with my experience in law. Having had success in the private sector, representing my clients and also getting that trial experience and getting that experience representing public agencies vis-a-vis the county, my representation with the county, I thought, it might be great to run for office. So that's when I ran for city attorney in 2014. And I was right. I mean, being the city attorney is sort of the perfect combination for me, my interest in elected office and politics, but also still doing the work of a lawyer and representing the city. So while I didn't have my start in public representation, I developed it through my private practice. And then it translated really well to the city attorney's office.
So let's park there for just a moment. So 2012, I was running for state assembly. Huntington Beach was in the assembly district that I was in. At that time, Dana Rohrabacher was our Congress person, and we had a lot of support from a lot of the local electeds. And we opened up an office in Huntington Beach, kind of a ground zero, and we would, spend a lot of time. And I'm trying to run my companies and do this and run for this. We would, and you're doing your law practice, and on the weekends we would go down to meet everybody, be 20, 30 people. And then we would fan out and go and start walking precincts and talking to people and going to events. And I was very appreciative of the support. And we kind of banded together a lot of different people. And I got to meet a lot of the Huntington Beach local elected too. Right. I could tell at that point, because you and I'd had some discussions, that you were really thoughtful and deliberate. I could tell you were doing your due diligence. You were trying to see, hey, what is it like to run a race? What's it like to be involved? You were making connections. You were showing not only in writing checks, but physically getting out there and showing by actions that you would, you're going to have something to contribute. I got to ask you the question. 2014, kind of, I lost track. You and I connected with some other issues in 2018, but when I see Huntington Beach elections and I look at them from afar, being a local elected in Los Alamitos, I looked over and go, wow, city councils draw 25 people. There's 9 seats, but not 9 of them aren't open every time. But I mean, there's a tremendous amount of people. Name ID. Sometimes you got everybody from famous WWF, fighters. And then you've got people with prominence, current, Tony Strickland, who was a state senator. I knew him as a senator when he was serving at the state level. Had to be kind of a big deal to go after. And I'm just, if you wouldn't mind, before we get into some details, I think it'd be interesting for people that are interested in running for office, especially in a big city. Yeah. What was your mindset in preparing for an election that you knew you really had to kind of go all in?
Yeah, another great question. And I ended up running in 2014 against an incumbent. My race was an incumbent running for re-election. So it was not an open seat. It was a difficult fight. The incumbent had been there for 12 years. But when we were talking, you and I were talking in 2012, and I was mentally preparing for that race in 2014 for city attorney, I knew it was an important office. I knew, as you're indicating, that Huntington Beach, it's a big city. There's 135,000 registered voters. It's an at-large election system. So the outreach, the campaign is massive in Huntington Beach to try to win a seat as an elected official. But I knew in high school, I sort of had a little bit of a mental turning point in high school. I grew up in a household of, I had 6 siblings in my household. And so there's a little bit of a kind of a herd mentality, go along to get along. Everybody sort of fends for themselves. I wasn't particularly college bound, frankly, in the household that I grew up and in my experience in high school. But in high school, like I said, I had a little bit of an epiphany or a mental turning point. I decided in high school that I wasn't going to let life happen to me. I was going to go out and make life happen for myself. So that was really the mentality that I carried on. And when we met in 2012, and when I was preparing in my mind for 2014, I wanted to make sure that my wife and kids were comfortable with the run for office, and they were. Once I got their support, I was all in and committed. And for me, there's no losing. I was in it to win it. And so I went all in and, like you said, put forth every single effort. It ran a robust and aggressive campaign and prevailed. And frankly, that attitude of there's no second place or there's no loss. You got to win, and also go out and make life happen. I do that today with the city attorney job. Representing the city of Huntington Beach. So I'm all in all the time, going hard, charging hard, because it's really important, especially as an elected official now. The community expects the commitment out of me. They expect the hard work and they expect the results. So I have a lot of people to answer to. I'm not just answering to my wife and my kids and a boss. I have 200,000 people in Huntington Beach I'm answering to. So a lot of responsibility, but a lot of reason to put in 110% effort all the time.
So to break this down just a little bit, before we even get into the role, you gave an important stat of most cities are the city attorney is basically contracted, and the city council votes on the contract, but it's usually through the city attorney. I'm sorry, the city manager that a lot of this gets going, and then it's probably more of administrative support, trying to keep us council members back in the day when I was on the council, kind of from not breaking the law, making sure that we do the right things procedurally. And then oversee the municipality itself and all legal things. But it was probably more as a service, not. But if you look at the city attorney role in an elected, you're actually I'm just saying this is my experience, is that usually that person, that role is something that's more active. Cities decide to have a city attorney because they want an active voice. Because most cities, the votes are on the council. The city attorney, though, kind of as an adjunct member into there, that you don't really get a vote. You have to kind of present your case to the council. And so maintaining those relationships are kind of a key thing. And as a city council member and a mayor, I fired a lot of city attorneys in my day.
Right.
And I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying, and I didn't personally, but the council drew ire on maybe the city attorney was going one way or the other and wasn't following the will of the city. So it was a different thing. It seems like, and I knew your predecessor going into, and I knew your personality. So I knew you were kind of you have principles, you go in and fight stuff. And I think that when I looked at Huntington Beach before you ran, a lot of development had taken place. Like it got to that 100% in those previous 12 years. And I think that was a reaction I learned when I was running for state assembly is people were like, whoa, somebody's got to slow this train. It's like, look, I'm running for state assembly. I'm not slowing that train, but I was familiar. As a city attorney that's elected, you feel that charge of being a little bit more proactive and out there. But how do you keep the council with you just in general?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. The council, the city council in Huntington Beach, just like in other cities, is really the voice of the city itself. And in Huntington Beach's case, it's the charter city or the municipal corporation. That voice is the voice that tells me to fight a lawsuit or not fight a lawsuit or to settle. If we settle, how much? Do we appeal a case? So ultimately, that's the client voice, is the city council. The difference between an elected city attorney and an appointed city attorney is essentially, in order to stay elected, right, the community has to see results. They have to see what I'm doing. And I think that's an important difference. And so that's why I have probably either you can call it more pressure or more incentive to actually go out and fight really, really hard to deliver results for the community so that I can get reelected. Here's a perfect example. The city of Huntington Beach was sued a number of years ago over an officer-involved shooting. Unfortunately, the threat or the suspect ended up passing away as a result of the officer-involved shooting. Well, the family sued the city of Huntington Beach for $20 million over the wrongful death. Well, the police shooting was a good shooting, but that's a case that was brought by probably one of the top plaintiff attorneys in the state of California on police shooting cases against the city of Huntington Beach. That case would have been settled by other cities with an appointed city attorney for probably $5 or $10 million just to sort of make it go away. Yeah. And I went and I spoke to my city council a few years ago, and I said, look, this case is coming. It's a $20 million case. But I believe in our officers. I reviewed everything. They did everything according to the law. And if this council's willing to allow me to, I'm willing to take it to trial. And I had a very supportive city council at the time, and I still do. But at the time then, making that decision, they said, you know what? Yeah, take it to trial. So I tried that case against, as I said, the number one attorney in the state on police shooting cases just a couple of years ago. And we got a complete defense verdict. Wow. So we literally, zero tax dollars, zero taxpayer money went to that case. We exonerated our police officers and we got a complete defense verdict. Awesome. But I stuck my neck out and I really pushed hard. And I did that in large part because I have the pressure from the community, right? Because they're watching, but also the incentive that I want to give them good results for their tax dollars. And that's something inherent to elected office. It's not inherent to appointed. Those attorneys who are appointed and are working with their city councils to settle those lawsuits aren't working 80 hours a week like I am to prepare for trial, to go to trial, to work hard and fight for the folks, to fight for our cops. So just a different dynamic. One other quick aspect about elected versus appointed is as an elected, I answer to the people. I don't answer to the city council on my legal advice. So when I evaluate the law and I am counseling my city council on what's legal or what's not legal, I can be straight with them. I don't have to candy coat it or shade it or try to tailor it to what their expectations are. I can call a spade and be completely objective in my evaluation without fear of losing my job. So I think being elected and having that independence, because I'm not fearful of losing my job if the city council doesn't like my answer, I think it gives me the freedom to be very, very honest and upfront about what the law is.
I agree. And your point about, and I'll just kind of give you, from my perspective, when you're sitting up there, one of five, and you have the city attorney, and if you're in a fractured council, there was periods I definitely was, your first thing is like, who is talking to that city attorney? Because that city attorney knows they're only 3 votes away from getting removed. And, you wouldn't want it to seem so petty, but it's politics, so it's real. Hey, backing up a little bit now, or maybe kind of adding the next layer on, I'm interested in the structure of the city attorney office. When we do a city attorney in a charter city that has an appointed city attorney, we hire that person, and behind them there are a bunch of people that do work, and they're kind of the figurehead or the general counsel to the city. What does the city attorney's office look like? What are the scope and areas of coverage that you guys provide?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. So I probably could treat my office like I'm just a figurehead, but I don't want to do that for a number of reasons, which I won't get into all of them. But primarily, I'm a lawyer first. I'm an elected official second in my mind. And I love practicing law, and I want to stay in touch with the law, which is why I roll up my sleeves and I go to trial. So I probably could sit as a figurehead and basically delegate and then have my team behind me. I just choose not to do that. I'm going to be in court tomorrow, frankly, arguing on the merits, a trial on a housing case where the state of California sued Huntington Beach over high-density housing. And so I'm going to be there myself arguing the case. So I do roll up my sleeves. I am in the trenches doing the work. And I just think that makes me a better lawyer, but also makes me a better representative for not only the city, but for the community. I have 10 attorneys, though, on my staff.
Okay.
So, and then I have other legal support staff. So we are a full team. We have pretty much 3 divisions. We have a civil litigation division, which I'm a large part of. We have a community prosecutor division. So just like the DA's office has deputy DAs prosecuting crime, we are in Huntington Beach, the second city only in the entire county of Orange prosecuting crime in the city attorney's office at the city level. So Anaheim is the first city. Huntington Beach is the second city. So we actually prosecute crime. So we have a division there prosecuting crime. And then thirdly, we have kind of a research and advisory division. So we have some attorneys actually just doing a bunch of research on different questions of law and then providing legal opinions or counsel to other departments in the city. So we have 12 other departments, whether it's police department, fire department, library, public works, planning, city manager's office, and then also advice to the city council. So they'll do the research and prepare the opinions. I'll review them. And if I agree with them and I've tested them and I approve of them, then I'll take those to the city council. So 3 basic disciplines or areas of specialty in my office. But yes, I do have a team.
What about the caseload? When you kind of take a look at that, when I was meeting with Steve Wolfson, his perspective, it was kind of mind-boggling. I had done my interview with him on a weekend or a holiday actually, and there was still like all of his lawyers were in there, and I said, "What are these people doing today? I mean, what's so important?" And he's like, "Troy, I get 75,000 cases a year." And he goes, "I'm just and he goes, and they're doing the preliminary evaluations as you said, and then they present stuff to him, and he makes the decision. So 3 divisions where sounds like your caseload. What would be the kind of the most busiest, and any ideas on stats?
Yeah, so things fluctuate. In terms of civil litigation, we have a range of small trip and falls all the way up to police use of force cases, which can be multi-million-dollar cases. And then we've got some cases where we're on the plaintiff side. Like I mentioned, we had sued the state of California because it wrongfully withheld taxpayer money, for instance, from Huntington Beach. And so we sued the state of California, and we actually prevailed in that case and got $40 million back from the state of California to Huntington Beach. So there are times where we're on the plaintiff side. As a rolling average on those civil cases, we're at about 40 to 45. That's a rolling average. So at any given time, anywhere from 40 to 45 cases that we're handling. In terms of criminal cases, we're probably shy of about 2,000 as a rolling average of ongoing criminal cases. So, as some drop off, others come on. And so it's about a rolling average of less than 2,000 cases. And then our advisory team is always fielding a bunch of research. So it's definitely a full load. But it's obviously work that we love. It's good, meaningful work. And I know the taxpayers in the community really appreciate it.
Can I ask you on the criminal side? I just want to kind of put two topics up just to kind of see where you fall on this. Is one side, criminal could be stuff that happens with shoplifting and and crime in the business areas. And so outside of Orange County, I do a lot of work in LA. Within LA, obviously, they have a real problem with and they're depending on the district attorney to do stuff. And some of the frustration has been whether those things are actually being pursued. And because the people that do and perpetrate those crimes know that they're not pursued, so it kind of builds on itself. So I guess my first question is what type of criminal cases do you pursue? Is it in that vein, or is it something related to that?
Yeah, so we treat first of all, we're prosecuting misdemeanors, so state level misdemeanors under the penal code. We're not doing felonies. That's exclusive jurisdiction of the district attorney. We work really well with the Orange County District Attorney's Office and Todd Spitzer. He's doing a fantastic job at the county level, and we're doing our part at the city level, and we're working together. Our prosecutors know that we prosecute our misdemeanors, though, in Huntington Beach like they're felonies. We take them very, very seriously. We don't treat them like traffic tickets. We treat them like serious crimes because the community's watching and the community cares. We in our office are focused mainly on the crimes that impact quality of life. So public intoxication, exactly like what you were mentioning, public intoxication, public indecency. We are enforcing our camping and loitering laws, all of the stuff that people see when they go out in public in the downtown areas of Huntington Beach and things like that. Vandalism, petty theft. We're cracking down. Gascon in LA may not be cracking down on thefts that occur below a certain threshold,
like
but
$900. But
yeah.
then they become misdemeanors. That's why I was wondering if you pick them up.
And we and in the Orange County District Attorney's Office are both prosecuting those aggressively. So we are absolutely tough on crime in Huntington Beach. And I will tell you, just as a statistic, I started this program in Huntington Beach with the support of Tony Rakakis, the then district attorney, and now I have the support of Todd Spitzer. We started in 2017. From the time that we started the program, the community prosecutor program at the city level in my office in 2017, a year and a half later, I went to the police chief and I said, hey, you keep data on crimes and levels of crime throughout the city. Can you correlate any data to our work in the prosecutor's office? And he said, he went and did a study. He came back with the results and he said, yeah, actually, crime in the downtown area of Huntington Beach dropped 11.5% just since you've been prosecuting crime. Wow. And that wasn't some anomaly or it didn't have anything to do with a change in their policing or anything like that. He said it's because of the support of the community prosecutors in the city attorney's office in Huntington Beach. And like I said, it's because we've been tough on crime. We've been following through. And we treat our misdemeanors like felonies. So we've been very, very tough. So if anybody wants to commit a crime, don't come to Huntington Beach.
Yeah. The other thing that I learned with the Las Vegas with Steve Wolfson was he actually did something very similar to what you've done, but he actually went after deadbeat parents. And, it's because that is a county function. And he was able to claim some unbelievable numbers, really fighting on behalf of the people that need people fighting for them when, the people that are single parents trying to raise their kids. And so when you said that, it made me think about that. It's interesting, just to give you a little bit of a kind of a background or in my experience at Huntington Beach, too, is, before I went in administration in 2018-19, I owned an underground telecommunications company. And that company basically installed fiber optic cabling throughout cities, throughout counties, did most of the work. Then you drive from like Riverside to Vegas, all the infrastructure that was put in. My company did a lot of that underground. we did a lot of work in Huntington Beach. We did a lot of work in different cities in Orange County. And where I'm going with this is you and I never really did anything together directly because I think the city attorneys don't get involved at that level.
Right.
But when you have an underground telecommunications company, you have to go and get verified with the city that you're going to dig somewhere. All of that type of work in that business, we would. I have a consulting company that would bill by the hour, and I have a underground company that would bill by the foot. And so we would get hired to lay 1,300 feet of something through the middle of a city. One time in Huntington Beach, I ended up getting a call. My brother ran that company, and he's like, Troy, we got a problem here in Huntington Beach. I'm like, what happened? He goes, we were doing that dig in downtown Huntington Beach. And he goes, are you by a TV? And I'm like, well, no. And he goes, fine. He goes, are you home? I go, yeah. He goes, go turn on the news. And we hit an underground water line, and it started flooding all of, portion of downtown Huntington Beach. And, the argument, we won't get into the merits of the argument because it'd be inappropriate, but in underground, it's always whether things were marked or not. And so, quote, our point at that point was, and this was way back in the day, that it was not marked, and we hit it, and water damage happens really quickly in a downtown area, and it became a news item. And so I got to see choppers looking down at the city where the water was starting to take over some shops and downtown. And and where I'm going with this also is that was bad. And we definitely got in there. That's why insurance is so expensive for underground construction companies. I will say, and again, you and I did not talk through this, is Huntington Beach was fair arbiters. I mean, I wish I could say that was the only city that ever happened, but I owned that company for 14 years. It happens. And different cities treat it differently. And it was always good if you're going to have that type of problem to at least have a business-minded city, because right then the people that get most affected are the businesses, and they're quite in your jurisdiction, in your city. So they kind of have a vote and a voice, but some of them don't live in your city, so they don't really have a vote. I don't know. I just thought Huntington Beach was always one that, like I said, I don't pray for damages like that, but when it happens, it was nice to have kind of balance. And so just your voice to the business community for companies that do a lot of work to support the businesses. It seems like from possibly at your level, at your office, it seems to be, although you're tough on crime, you're tough on quality of life, it seems like you're pretty pro-business from what I could tell. My experience is dated, but any comment to that?
Yeah, well, the reality is we're tough where we need to be, right? We're tough when we need to be. And when it comes to fighting for justice or fighting for what's right, we'll go all the way. But when there are issues that need to be looked at with equity and fairness, then we'll deal with those on a case-by-case basis, and we will be. And the reason is because a lot of the city leadership, and it's been this way for a number of years now, is we're from the private sector and we're from the community. I live in Huntington Beach and have since I was a kid. And so we know that our treasures, the city leadership knows that our treasures in Huntington Beach are our homeowners, our residents, and our businesses. And so the last thing we want to do is be at odds with our own community. That may seem intuitive to the audience. It may seem natural to think that way. I can tell you most governments don't think that way. There are a lot of governments in other cities, other maybe counties as well, where there's a bit of a government ivory tower, sort of an ivory tower sort of perspective, where they're always right, the community's always wrong, and they're going to tell the community what to do or what not to do, right? And so, but Huntington Beach is just different. We are all of the electeds. We're from the community. We don't lose touch with the community. We do our best to not be tone deaf to the community, and we see them as our treasures, our supporters, and our allies. So I think embracing the community, valuing the community, and trying to work with the community, whether it's a business that hit a snag in the city or a resident that hits a snag in the city, we try to work through those things. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Let me shift a little bit. So a lot of different areas. You've talked a little bit about, housing and zoning laws and things that you're fighting. You and I, our experience together probably goes back to 2018, where we were really taking on really local control issues within the city. And, at that time, there was a Senate bill that was passed. It was something that, really kind of took some control away from the cities and really kind of tried to get the state to tell the cities what to do. I thought something that was very helpful when we were going through this process together was, local control is a very important, concept. And when you run in local, city council races or, city attorney races, a lot of things is that, the cities want to maintain that. We were looking at the issue specifically SB54. It was an issue that we were focused on, and it basically said that cities weren't allowed to go back and deal directly with the federal government, whether it would be in, within ICE, HSI, which actually prosecutes and goes after and coordinates a lot of the drug trafficking, along with coordination with CBP, Border Patrol, Border Protection, and obviously the immigration issue. But it was interesting as that heated up, you and I really weren't focused on the immigration part of it. We were really focused on the two types of cities in the state, constitutional law city and a charter. We both come from charter cities, Los Alamitos and Huntington Beach. and I guess before we get into inside baseball and too technical, talk about your actions and local control. And it seems like out of the 8 or 9 issues we could talk about that cities care about today, local control still seems to be something that you're focused on.
Yeah, so I think this goes back probably decades. It probably happens in every state and maybe in every city. There's always this tug of war between state level authority and local level authority. Probably not unlike the sort of the tug of war, the conflict between the federal government and states, right, on different issues. And so, as a charter city, charter cities like Los Alamitos and like Huntington Beach, they have constitutional rights under the California Constitution, specifically Article 11 rights. And as a charter city, basically a city adopts a charter, which is a document, which is the highest governing document. It's a little bit of a constitution for that city. And case law has recognized it as a sort of an emancipation from the state legislature. So charter cities have constitutional rights to govern for themselves on local matters. Now, that's not to say that if you're a charter city, you're suddenly an island away from beyond the reach of Sacramento. That's not what I'm trying to say. But there are, the law recognizes that there are certain matters of statewide concern, like waste management, that Sacramento sort of dictates governance over, waste management, health, education. So certain big topics that really touch all 4 corners of the state that are a matter of statewide concern, and those are the purview of Sacramento, of state control. But there are some constitutionally recognized local control issues, and typically those are local elections. So, Huntington Beach just the voters approved a voter ID requirement here just this past March in the primary. Those local elections issues are local control issues, local municipal affairs. Managing your own police department, which touches on the SB 54 issue that you mentioned. Managing your own police department is a matter of local control. Zoning and housing has classically been a matter of local control. And the conflict that I mentioned earlier, or the tug of war, has heated up again the past 10 years, where the state over the past 10 years has been doing more and more and more to control what has been classically considered local control issues. Because I think, especially in California, Sacramento sort of wants a one-size-fits-all on every issue for every city, right? Every city's going to do it our way on policing. Every city's going to do it our way on elections. Every city's going to do it our way on housing. And that's just not the way California's been set up. I mean, if you go back, 75 years or 100 years, California was a city-run state. In fact, there were cities incorporated in California before the state was incorporated and recognized as a state. So California really was a collection of cities, formal cities, before it was a state. And so there's just been this tug of war, this conflict going back and forth. And I think the pendulum's going to start swinging back in favor of local control because we have had more and more rulings, more and more lawsuits, and more court rulings that are starting to take a little bit closer look, at least take this question more seriously. I will give a nod to city of Redondo Beach. I don't know if you heard, but they prevailed in their court case just yesterday. A court decision came out in favor of the city of Redondo Beach over a charter city challenge to the state over housing in the SB9 on the SB9 issue. So city of Redondo Beach, I think to some people's surprise, prevailed in court up against the state of California. And that was literally a state control versus local control on the SB9 issue. So
yeah, Michael, it's a little bit of the theme of the show is to obviously look at how can people and how can businesses thrive. When you look at California, a lot of the discussions I have with people is like, especially I spend most of my time in DC. A lot of people are like, why don't you just leave? And I'm like, no, because I still believe it's a great place. I think there's a lot to be had. It's my perspective. It's very similar to Nevada and Arizona, where you've got a pretty diverse population, but the voting happens in these core metropolitan areas, and those areas can't really be switched one way or the other. And so what ends up happening, local control, I think, becomes really important as the state tries to find itself and not be overrepresented by a metropolitan mindset. And the nation's like that too, right? Two coasts and stuff in between. I think when we look at local control and kind of what goes on and why that's so important to preserve is because we do want alternative voices to this. And, if one size does fit all, then I guess that's efficient government. But pretty soon, if, the cities don't really have rights, I'm not just saying this because I'm thinking this is a good idea. I did 12 years to try to do my part. And, so when you kind of go through that, like you said, and I think the part that was, it was hard when we were fighting local control with, SB 54, which was the sanctuary law, is, we're like, hey, this is about local control. It's about telling our police, we have the right based on the Constitution of California as a charter city to fund our police, set the priorities of our police as a city council, meaning our priorities. And if we want to have our police be able to deal directly with the federal government in a coordinated fashion, that's the will of the city, not for the state to come down and tell our police what to do. Although the number is dwindling down, it's definitely worth fighting for. Yeah. So I appreciate the work that you've done towards that.
Yeah, and I think what may be lost in this conversation or this debate about charter city versus charter city control, local control versus state control, is I think people think of it in terms of like policy. Well, isn't more housing a good policy? Shouldn't we all be listening to the state on more housing or for even the immigration issue? Like, isn't it better that we have a sanctuary state policy? Look, this isn't about policy. This is about local control. And what that means is it's about democracy and accountability. If the state were to steamroll all of the local control authority and start controlling every area of local governance, then there would be less accountability for the folks, right? Less accountability to elected officials for the voters, because the voters then, what good is a city council? What is the purpose of a city council if they're not making those decisions because the state is making those decisions? They're just there for photo ops and to name parks, because those are the important decisions that need to be made at ground zero in the communities so that the community can hold those decision makers accountable. If all of the decision makers are up in Sacramento on these local land use issues or local policing issues, then there's really no accountability, and then there's really no democracy. I mean, it would stifle public participation in the decision-making process if local control was taken away.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. So, Michael, as we kind of get ready to kind of draw down and look across, again, looking at California just in general, and, you being at the state or at the city level, but a pretty significant city, then you look at federal and what's going on there. Anything that you would think through that would be helpful for the listeners to get a perspective? You're at the city attorney level. looking at the future, and I always tell people, like, for California, I still look at the glass half full, like even as good or bad as it could be, and you could be on both sides of that. As a business owner, I definitely want it to succeed. But I was just kind of curious, what is your longer term view, the next 5 years, 10 years, and then maybe you personally, what do you hope to contribute to that?
So I've been very happy fighting for Huntington Beach as the city attorney, and a lot of people ask me, what are you going to do next? Are you going to run for district attorney? Are you going to run for state assembly? Are you going to run for Congress? And while those types of questions they are flattering, I'm now in my third term as city attorney, and so I'm happy to stay here and to fight for the city of Huntington Beach as an attorney, though, too, and a lover of the law. Long term, it would be nice maybe at some point to be able to be on a different side of the law. So right now I'm an advocate as a lawyer, but it would be nice, I think, at some point to sit as a judge and to be a part of the legal system that way, to be a part of the judicial system. But we'll see. We'll see where life takes me. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the American system, the American judicial system, the American political system. I love being here, a part of it. I look forward to possibly being a part of it in maybe a different way, not so much as a representative on policy like a congressman per se, but maybe and hopefully, but maybe as a judge one day.
When you look at the state itself and the direction that it's going, anytime I have philosophical and sometimes political debates on whether California's going the right way, one of the items that gets brought up is that California by itself is the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world by itself, like out bigger than, after China, U.S. and other countries, it comes to California. Kind of hard to argue with that one. But again, and then if you look at California, part of that machine, at least in Southern California, funding that is tourism and Huntington Beach. You can go up to Silicon Valley and see stuff happening up there too. But when you look at this as a state, though, what's your prognosis, like in general, outside the law, directionally going the right way? Should we have hope from your perspective? You're seeing the policies and the interactions and what's going on in Sacramento.
Yeah. So, I think it kind of depends on which lens you look through, right? I think a lot of partisans, if you're on the left, you think the state's in a great shape. If you're on the right, you think it's miserable, but you're hopeful that the political pendulum's going to swing. I think California's pretty complicated. I don't know if a pendulum swing is going to happen like that overnight, where there are some hopefuls on the right looking at it that way. I think my biggest concern for California is that because we're so big, we have such an impact. And one of the things that I am particularly concerned about is leadership right now seems to have priorities, I think, that are not aligned with the everyday citizen of the city, of the state. The leadership in Sacramento, for instance, has dumped something like $13 billion or maybe more into fighting homelessness. Yet in most cities, homelessness has never been worse, right? So, and they don't have strong policies of enforcement. So they're throwing money at it, but they won't enforce anti-camping or anti-loitering laws. They refuse to in cities. So there's just a real strange disconnect between the policies of the state and what the community wants. And I don't think it's particularly partisan. I don't know anybody who lives in any city, whether it's a conservative city or a more progressive city, who embraces people living on the streets and defecating on the streets. Like, nobody thinks that's a good idea, right? Yet our state is pumping billions and billions of dollars into, quote unquote, trying to solve it, yet they're absolutely not solving it. They're completely inept in that regard. And the community remains disappointed. The community, I mean the citizens throughout the state, remain disappointed and disgusted that nothing's being done on things like that. And then you look at crime. Crime is up by any metric and every metric. And so it just seems like the state's going in the wrong direction. Yet, as you said, why? We're the fourth or fifth largest economy. We have all the either all the resources or potentially all the resources. really to solve every problem, yet they're not solving them. And so I think that's sort of the frustration. So my prognosis is hopeful, but we really need to get our head on straight and start doing things differently. And we need to stop, quote unquote, having conversations about solutions. And we need to know that we have solutions, which is enforce the laws on the books, enforce the anti-camping laws, enforce the anti-loitering laws, and actually just roll up your sleeves and do the work. There are laws on the books. We need to enforce them.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I just want to tell you how thankful I am for all the work that you're doing for Huntington Beach and for being a friend and coming on the show and sharing a little bit of our history together. I really, really appreciate it.
And I congratulate you on the show. You're doing great work by having the show. And so I encourage you. I'm looking forward to more success for your show to come.
Great. Well, appreciate it, Michael. Well, I hope you have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.